Hey there.
Hey, hey Brian. I think you're on mute, Brian.
Yes, there we go.
Yay.
Just saying hello.
Hi.
Hey Brian, have you set up the to help um with the website, the page, the landing page and stuff?
I have not been, no. Why do you have some edits that need to happen?
Well, I was working with Tracy and we'll go over some of that stuff today, but um I since I should probably just get out my windows and call it a day, but just working with Mac, I had to download Brew and you know, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
It's a
I
little bit
haven't
more
gone through it
complicated.
yet.
Oh,
I've been a Mac OS for gosh, about 15 years now. So I am a Mac OS guy with Brew and all that, but I haven't gone through the process yet. Uh, I suppose I should be capable of doing it. You let me know if you need me to get spun up on it, and
okay. Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, it's been just a little bit for me, so getting
what it's what is what is it being edited through? She's using Hugo, is it?
yeah, yeah, I did
Oh,
Hugo server. Um, and yeah, so I was, getting into that and stuff. So it's been
cool.
a little bit since coming from a cybersecurity background, right? Um, my coding skills are, I would say, like average.
Right.
Um, so I come at it from a totally different perspective, but it's good. Makes me feel back to my college days.
I know. Well, I always joke. I started I was an engineer. Was an engineer for years, but that was years ago, right? Shifted into product marketing, more in the business, and I
Yeah.
always joke that it was probably about 7 years after I should have stopped calling myself an engineer that I woke up one day and I'm like, I can't call myself an engineer anymore. Um, and um and stuff moves so fast that
Yeah.
I find and I always have a technical project going in, but I stop and I start, and the ramp up now for me, I'll just say there's a lot of time learning new technologies, probably more than I actually spend using them, which means um I rarely get wholly proficient at the hands-on keyboard stuff at this point.
Right,
Um,
right.
for for better or worse. I think worse ultimately. Uh,
It's good. I'm like, this is all good to sort of, get back in because I usually do like a WordPress type of thing. And, it's
mhm,
not a big deal, and the coding is, a little bit different, but not much. But I'm certainly not, you know, um, I certainly have come at it from a security operations center perspective,
right.
like this
Yeah.
whole SOC and bringing in events and, you know, and you're usually going into tools, pulling the events into a monitor and stuff like that. So totally. So it's, it's healthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, here's I say at least this. Uh, like at the wide and broad perspective is key. But for me, a lot of the value in my wide and broad perspective has been couched in the fact that I had some tactical experience
Yeah.
that I can roll up. So, um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's funny. I just joined this company, CIQ. I was a random sort of tangential company, CIQ, that manages a Linux distro. As a matter of fact, Rocky Linux, which I guess is what which is the NSA's approved Linux distro, so a target client of ours. But what I am dealing with firsthand is what it means for a small team of engineers to continuously try to remediate CVEs, which is a perspective I wasn't even close to having a month ago, frankly.
Right.
Um, um, so you just trigger that when again, addressing your
Yeah.
security work. Even though I've been, or I'm with Ortelius, I'm with Deploy Hub. Um, Looking at from the inside out is giving me a much better understanding of what secure supply chain looks like and the
Right.
challenges that are present there.
Yeah. Big challenges too. So it's 11:32. We
Cool.
have a couple people who are not able to join us today. Of course, Tracy's not able to join us. Um, and um, and Roxanne is not able to join us today either. So um, welcome uh, everyone. And I guess as I spoke to Tracy on some of the things, and Brian, we were just sort of talking about the page. So why don't we go ahead and kick this off officially? And let's see, this is for March 4th. And again, this is for the special interest group. I'm going to go ahead and share the document that we're working on, and going forward, some things that Tracy and I were talking about on what to do. Hey, Ann, how are you? So welcome. All right,
Hello, Ian.
let's go ahead and give me a second here so I can share things up. And let me just minimize. All right, so right now you should be seeing the document guide, the web page that we're all trying to build out and get on the same page, right? So it's the 3 steps on this side: code and pre-build, build and deploy, and post-deploy. So a couple of things that we want to do. One is that we want to make sure that everyone going forward is on the same page. What's important here, and I know Brian, I've been working with Jude, and sort of as we start to talk about this with in groups, and as we try to push this out and bring people into this group and creating these security standards, um, we're working on like a 1-page flyer that we can all share, so that when we are going out to these groups, we're going to try to bring people in and just say, hey, part of this special interest group on creating security for the SDLC, and this is the landing page that you can go to. Right, we're trying to make it like bite size and very consumable, so that everyone's able to get on the same page. So does that fit with what everyone here knows to be true, and this is the goal? Does this work for everybody? What do you guys think? Brian, Victor,
I'd
Chris?
say, yeah, that's what I understand to be the goal, and I guess I'll add, I feel like um, going through the process of being able to easily communicate our purpose and our perspective on security. Um, it, I think, also sort of forces us to further refine the framework through which we'll operate. I realize I'm sort of talking in circular motion here. Yeah, long story short is yes, and I think as we go through this process, it overall lends us to be able to better define what we are doing, frankly.
I got a follow-up question about last meeting. That was like last time we talked about like focusing mostly on open source tools, but maybe also consider like a proprietary tools. So maybe we should. I'm thinking of just brainstorming. Maybe we should do both, and gather as much information as we can before we trim it down to the ideal level.
And I think one of the we did sort of talk about the proprietary tools. And I think that we want to go open source so that, so that we can provide, uh, tools for everyone to use, right? And sort of cut down that expense, um, was sort of the idea. And what are some good open source tools? But it's something, Chris, that we can definitely, I think, look at as we go on.
Okay.
And talk about that. So one of the areas that we just want to hopefully define in this meeting and then going forward is the document that we're putting this time into. And visually speaking, so just visually speaking, making sure that when you come here and you land on this page, it will have, what is the security guide, and then the 3 bullet points. And under the bullet points will be basically content. So if you hit this, you'll also have on the left-hand side, this will start to be built out as well. But just right now, as we look at it, does it visually, we talked about tables really doesn't work well. It sort of made it, so now in lieu of getting rid of the tables, we're putting it more bullet point. And so we want to today go through and just make sure that this document visually makes sense. Does that work for everyone right now, Ed?
I sent on so I'm working with Jaspo just to clarify a few things on open source contributions, that kind of thing. But I sent on the table format or proposed table format to Tracy in email. I don't know, is Tracy on?
She
No.
wasn't able to make it. So
Okay. I can
and
forward.
I would love to see it. Yeah.
Okay, so I can share my screen if you want. Just to give folks a sense, it's a kind of rough draft, but I think I was trying to capture what we had kind of spoken about, which was a table with that would allow developers. Sorry if I back up. I thought what we said last time was the purpose was to enable developers choose between open source tools to comply with the SSDF. I think that was one of the goals.
That is one of the goals. Yes.
Okay. So so then we spoke about putting it in a table form where we'd have the SSDF requirement with for each of the tools, red, green, yellow, if it meets that requirement or partially meets or doesn't meet it at all. So a developer or a DevOps engineer will be able to look down and see, oh yeah, this tool meets 10 of them that I need. So but it doesn't meet one of the critical aspects that I need. So okay, on to the next one. And it'll be a lot of information off the page visually quickly. And then I think we also spoke about, if that is the goal, we should probably have a section on a few guiding principles for developers in making those decisions. But let me pull up the file that I sent to Tracy to give you a sense of how one way that we could lay it out. It would need, I can share my screen if you let me.
Sure.
It would need a graphic designer type person to pretty it, but the concept would be for each of the requirements, maybe even for each of the examples, that we'd have the appropriate tools over here, and developer could scan down and see, oh yeah, look at if I go with GitHub signing, that squares away this set of the SSDF.
Yeah.
One of my challenges, incidentally, was as I was reading through SSDF, there's kind of another category maybe that's missing. as an example, review and evaluate third-party software components in the context of their expected use. If a component is to be used substantially different way in a future platform, performed review and evaluation again with that new context in mind. So I'm thinking, what tool does that? Like, it does an open source tool? Maybe not. So maybe there's the next one: secure configurations for software components and make these available. Is there a tool that reviews secure configurations? Maybe, but then for this one, obtain provenance of SBOM. Okay, that I understand. That's kind of like a clear industry term. It's well accepted. All right, so we have a category here, SBOM. There's multiple tools to do SBOM. So my challenge was how do we kind of align the SSDF to maybe capabilities that tools have? Maybe there's something missing there. So I'll pause there. Hopefully some of that made sense.
It does make sense. Was somebody else going to say something?
No, I'll wait. Well,
Okay.
here, since I already made a noise before I hand it back to you, Kate, I just say I like the format. That is strong.
Yeah, the format is really nice, Ed. I think, and I'm trying to think how we could do it on the markup language within what we're using, because tables are not easy to do within the tool.
We could potentially do it with an image, and like if hopefully one of us would be able to get access to a graphic designer or something that would do it in like, that would make things look pretty and appealing.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we
Could
will
take a
possibly,
screenshot.
or I can SVG. We can SVG an image. So I'd say worst case, if it came down to it and we couldn't do tables, we could do an image that's SVG with, and I don't know if Hugo supports Lightbox, but if we were to do an SVG image and expand on click, then it may be doable.
I got a question. Like, I have some experience doing front end development, so maybe I can try to help with implementing kind of like a proof of concept somewhere, like in the new branch. Yeah, I can try that if I have like the source of data.
There is, I'm struggling to think of the name of it. There is an open source graphing tool that you can like plug into VS Code, but we got to think about something that's easy to contribute to. I think an image would be really difficult
to maintain. Yeah.
There's probably multiple steps or multiple aspects to it. One is the getting the table displayed in a format that's easily contributed to. That's one. Two would be actually getting the content. Like, so there's probably multiple steps involved in that. First step might be mapping the SSDF requirements to categories, easily understandable categories. And then the next step would be populating each of the cells. Last time we spoke about getting the open source library owners to maybe pipe up and tell us that they do or they don't and provide secure config examples for example. And then the third aspect I think that I'm tracking is this the exclusive goal or are there other goals? And I think I agree with you, Brian, even though I arrived a few minutes late. Probably the first step is getting absolutely crystal clear on what the objective is, what the output is, probably tied back to the mission of the CD Foundation. I'll shut up now.
So I feel like we're trying to convey that information, right? But Kate, what was the problem you were running into with tables?
So just putting the tables, so going back to this part, this page. So Tracy started to, since putting tables into this format, into the coding format, was not visually pretty. So so then breaking it down as an example like this, you know, protect the organization and in total framework, that type of stuff, open source tools to achieve. And so she started to break it down instead of in a table format, as you can see, like via with bullet points. So I understand. So
Yeah.
I understand, you know, like, would this be better in a table? Sure. But, you know, how do we do this within this formatting? I think is um is
Yeah,
where
'cause
we're
if you have a lot of tools, you can't just keep going to the right. I think is probably a lot of the problem, right?
probably. Yeah.
I also
So
think how, however, not adding much value can it is that this overtime will get this format gets unwieldy over time as well. I guess
yeah,
maybe let's just say
and I
I
think
think
right now,
one. I'm sorry, Kate,
right
I
now,
stepped on you.
no, it's I think right now, right? Like one of the most important parts of this call is to agree, let's think about this format. You know, let's think about, you know, as we come to this page, this landing page, you know, we want to make sure that people understand, you know, why are we doing this? And then the second part of this will be visually, like how do we make this functional, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, to both of your points, Ed, Brian, and I mean, you know, this will really grow. It will grow not only from a table format, but it's also going to grow from a content format, right? Where as we really dig in here and start to do code and pre-build, it's going to grow and grow and grow. So, you know, so how do we do this that makes sense? And that was one of the points um, that we're trying to get down for today. And then following in another 2 weeks, um, you know, agreeing to the format and then all of us helping to build it out collectively together. It can be a great learning tool, like for all of us to say, you know, I have used this and this really works. And yeah, so
Well, can I say something regarding this big documentation pages that sometimes grow, yeah, quite largely. One idea that usually comes in is to turn it into a search, let's say a search page, where someone types an expression that they want to search. If they want to search about signing, something about configuration as code or whatever, then we have sub pages that summarize the core content for that. So we don't need to have a super big page that just scrolls infinitely, but we can create a kind of a search mechanism so that people can quickly search through important things. So that is an option. Some I've seen some documentation websites that turned into that when they started growing very largely.
mhm.
Yeah, and I think Eduardo, you hit something else I want to say. Whether we solve the format issue before we start getting content or putting content, um, I I do think it's important that we have some sort of hierarchy at minimum. That would be a TOC at the top of this page.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, a bunch of this below the fold information is going to get married. Or to Eduardo's point, if there's actually a page hierarchy that we can outline in the left bar there, so you can expand code and pre-build, and then you can see all of the subsections. Yeah, I think that would make a huge difference. Um,
Yeah.
Other op-ed I'll add is, and I may be countering something I said earlier. I think, as Ed said, um, as long as we have some sort of hierarchy so we know that we can manage access to it, it may be better just to start filling the content than fully preemptively solving the formatting issues.
Yeah,
So there were
I think.
2 points
Mhm.
to summarize. We should add a
Yeah,
hierarchy, at least to TOC. And if we get caught in the weeds on how to represent things, then I'd say let's be ready to pass go and just generate content.
yeah, that I think it's the first step. Definitely, we need the content first. Then we see how we can navigate through the content. If we need those extra mechanisms to help guide the user, for example, searching or even flattening the things on the first page so that the user can just quickly see through all the table of contents and choose the sub pages. But first, we need the content, I think. Yes.
I'm in total agreement in it, and that sounds perfect. Does everyone here on the call, I saw Ed do a thumbs up and Brian, yeah, excellent.
I have a question to ask though. Is like, would that be possible like in the future if we need to present like tables to use pop-ups with the tables, so we can have both lists and tables eventually?
You know, one of the things that I was thinking about is that if we had a place maybe at the end of like, let's say code, so do the table of contents right on the left-hand side. And that's totally what Tracy was talking about when I had a meeting with her, doing just that, just what everybody here is talking about. And that sounds perfect. But I wonder, Chris, to your point, let's say we're going down, we're listing tools, blah, blah, blah. And maybe somewhere at the bottom, I wonder if we could put a link to a table
Yeah,
type of, that
makes sense. Yeah.
does,
Yeah,
okay,
we could. The other thing is we might, I mean, if we don't get too hung up on the table format, you could put those, so I don't want to lose the red, green, yellow thing that Ed
yeah,
was showing, but we might be
yeah,
able to put those as like icons, like right here next to Sonar Cube, for example, as a starting point, and then we could figure out how to, you know,
that's interesting.
Oh, I can do that later today. I'll put like a PR for that. So just a check mark with a green background, right?
well, it's like green, yellow, red, you know.
Okay.
Ed, can you share your table again?
Yeah, we'd have to add those over time, because we don't know off the top of our heads how fully each tool supports each requirement, but that would be
That's
a way to get that information into.
yeah,
By the way,
because it's
if we need to draw something, sorry, the tool is draw.io. I think so. That's an open source free diagramming tool, and yeah, it has plugins for popular editors, and then it expresses the diagram in code so that you can just check the diagram into GitHub, and then the next person can check it out and edit it in their own editor and update it.
Okay, I see.
yeah,
Just to add to Draw.io is that if you export the file, anyone can also edit and just make changes to the file, because I think it's XML at the end, so it can also be version controlled. Yeah.
yeah. I think, Anne, you were sort of saying that, right? That idea. We can work within our own editor. All right. So I believe that, so doing the table of contents on the left-hand side, we're all agreed to that. We're discussing, we've discussed about tables and how to do a table, which I do think, would be a nice, I think we should definitely take a look at those tools.
Yeah,
Raw.io.
I left in the chat, for example, the first one. They even have some tables in the. This is the landing page of a specific version of the thing, but they have tables in this landing page to then guide the user to the other sub pages. This first one, SLSA, and then the other ones are just examples where now they have a big search bar to just quickly search through the documentation. If you have some expression or if you have some keyword or something, then you go to specific sub pages of the documentation. So these are just examples of how people manage to create this documentation websites better for users.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So just added to the chat a link for some search tools we can use for the Hugo site. So it's like both kind of like we can use that.
nice. It's Hugo, which is nice. Okay. Alrighty. That is what, so moving forward, just to be clear, we're going to, all right, let me just share this again. We will have, we'll definitely start to do, TOC on the left-hand side and start to build it out. We'll take a look at, I'll take a look at these tables before 2 weeks come along. Ed, if you don't mind sharing that table that you had, again, that would be, phenomenal.
I can. It's not much. If can you ping me your email? I'm working
Yeah,
with
sure.
OSPO. I need to figure out how to do that formally in the GitHub. I don't want to be going bypassing any controls there, but I'll send it to you in an email
Sure.
today if you ping me your email either on LinkedIn or
Yeah,
here or however.
that would be great.
Yep.
I'll definitely do that. And we'll, because to your point, what I saw on that table, which I liked, was having all the different things that it checked off,
Yeah.
and and then I think we do have something to then take to the, to whatever tool, you know, take, OWASP, for example, and just say, what do you meet, out of all this, how many can we actually check off even?
Mhm.
Um,
Does anybody, a few other things as you're going through the list of what we could be doing? I forget who said it, but I really liked it. Getting clear on the why. So like maybe we spec out the use case we're trying to solve for here, which I think, but not sure, is a developer, DevOps engineer wants to ensure they're compliant with SSDF, not sure, or review the capabilities of a certain tool as it relates to SSDF. Whatever the use case is we're trying to solve, might be no harm have somebody actually write that down in black and white.
Yeah, very simply in a couple of sentences, you're sort of saying at the top. You're saying conspicuously and prominently at the top here. Ed.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and even for ourselves. And then the challenge I had, Kate, with I agree for whatever it's worth with getting the content first and figuring out how to display it after. Challenge I had is how do we take SDF and bucket it into categories of capabilities that the tools handle. I struggled with that. So I don't know if somebody else wants to have a cut of it. The example being SCA. SCA has, these few capabilities, and that covers, if you're interested in an SCA tool, that will cover these 5 things with the SSDF requirements. But there's no point in talking about, Git signing capabilities if you're just focused on, like, that might be mucked in with the one table. Maybe there's. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. To
No,
clarify,
we're thinking of, no, what you're saying makes sense. I'm looking at docs trying to grok and then think through the problem. So it's appreciated.
And I
I'm
appreciate
sorry,
that
Kate, I
too.
cut you off.
No, please. I appreciate that too, because, you know, I don't, just been doing this for a long time and from a cybersecurity point of view. And I certainly personally don't want anything else in my personal life to be created that is not a usable and consumable. I can't stress that enough on why are we doing this, and I personally want this to work, and I want this to make sense. And going from a capability standpoint, if you're, and I'm not an app developer, so I'm coming at this but what I know is when I was speaking to, app developers and everything else, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of them wanted this checkbox to say, this is covering this. And so I think it's important to put down what are we trying to do, and I think it's also important to help all of us understand from a cybersecurity standpoint that this is not one and done, that this is a continuous, but we don't want it to be out of control. We want it to I think, to, when you're doing the pipeline, that throughout the pipeline, we're trying to meet these security requirements, not just for auditing, but also just to make, to make things safer. So you bring up a really, good point, Ed, is maybe on this front page here that we're landing on, like pointing out very conspicuously, I don't know who used that, Brian or Ed, that word, but it's an excellent word, and put down exactly why are we doing this.
it wasn't me. I don't have fancy words in my my vocabulary.
Yeah, and
Great.
I'd be happy to and just to repeat back Kate and Ed, the task here is to it digestibly, without getting too fancy in words, I think digestibly communicate the why of the CI/CD security guide. And if that's the task, I can take a shot at it. I can take that on.
That would be great, Brian. Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we make that, for our next meeting, something that we can agree on? Like, does this make sense to everybody on the call? What Brian has put out, that when people land on this page, it's going to be like, yes.
Yes, and so I will grab that. Are we
Okay.
maintaining action items for? I mean,
I've
not
been
action
writing.
meeting minutes for this. Yeah.
I've been writing stuff.
Okay.
I started.
Sign me up
It's
for,
important.
so as I say, I'll send John the email to give you a sense of what we're thinking there, in terms of table, but in the meantime, I'm going to be working with the ASP on the Fidelity side. We've a really good group there with a mature process that I want to go through. So,
Good.
and then I can start, once I get that squared away and I get familiar with, I can start contributing to the GitHub repo directly.
Okay, that would be great.
The sooner we can get into GitHub, the better. I will
Yeah.
also address one other concern of Ed's. There are a lot of requirements in the SSDF that are like not addressed by CI/CD tools at all. And I think that's fine, right? We need to be okay with just, I don't know, having some way to indicate that we don't have anything to slot into this requirement, right? Or this is handled somewhere else.
Yeah, but that should be fine as well, no? If we could point that there's this, there are these parts of this frameworks that are still not addressed. Maybe people in the future will look at it as an opportunity for another set of open source tools. It's very similar to what happens in Europe with the regulations. A lot of times, tools and solutions just come out of necessity for this kind of regulations. And I think it's fine if we point out that we know that we haven't found tools that comply with certain aspects. So people are also aware that, yeah, if they want to fulfill certain requirements, maybe they need to create their own mechanisms, or yeah, find other solutions.
Yeah, and some of the requirements by their very nature are like organizational structure and things like that. Like there would never be a tool for that. So, we can have a way to explain that. I think,
Yeah,
like for
exactly.
example, when we onboard a new product, the first 10 requirements or something that people go through is basically like have your product lead read these documents and sign off that they did it, right? So it's like or we have a process to address XYZ. Here's the process. Now you know the process, right? There wouldn't be a CI/CD involvement in that.
Yeah.
And then Ed, to go back, I was going to ask is I think Anne Marie just spoke to what you're talking about, right? You're saying you tried to parse SSDF and figure out how to map tools to each of the major categories, but we're
Yeah.
struggling with that. Did I hear that correctly, Ed?
Yeah. So when I think about like AppSec and the AppSec space in general and tools applied to it, I think about things like SAST, DAST, SCA, signing, key management in the pipeline. Like there's the capabilities there that don't easily align with the SSDF the way it's written. It has some examples in fairness, where as I'm reading the examples, like, oh yeah, okay, I recognize that one. That's like DAST would apply here in the pipeline. But the mapping the mapping between SSDF and capabilities wasn't jumping out at me.
That I don't know. Assuming like Anne Marie saying like you have a fair amount of experience with SSDF. I don't. Um, I completely forgot what I was going to say. It was going to be profound, though. By the way, guys, it was going to solve it all. But I forgot. Yeah,
Nine
I
out of
mean,
10.
maybe.
9 out of 10 ain't bad. There, Brian. You're, a few things you're proposing there resonate with me at least.
uh, yeah, I mean, so I guess what I was going to say is it feels like, and I gotta disclaim any expertise in SSDF. It feels like it is it's tools and even tools categories are not going to map cleanly. It feels like there's certain tools and tools categories that are just going to span multiple requirements, and vice versa. On my scan that I'm doing here. So as nice as it would be to be clean to say, hey, in this section PW5, these are application security posture management tools. And I don't know if that's what you're striving for, Ed, but I would say that would be awesome, but it doesn't look like it would be practical based on what I see in your commentary. It does raise, though, this is pretty extensive, 27 pages. How do we tackle getting aligned? Actually, I withdraw that question, Kate. I'm just going to confuse things. I'm now going to zip it for a second. Yeah.
The only thing I'll add from a cybersecurity perspective, when we would do cybersecurity workshops, we would do and sort of to Anne's point here about process, we would break it down to 3 groups: people, process, and technology. And when you are reviewing a company's, people, process, and technology, it you would take requirements and then, what did it look like across these three groups? And accordingly, the process was a big deal, writing the process or acknowledging a process exists or doesn't exist, So is it people and you wanted it to pretty much go evenly across the board. Because oftentimes when we would do workshops, it was people heavy, meaning that there was a lot of interaction required for people to meet criteria that was easily that if they would have had a better process behind it, um, and acknowledge that maybe there is no tool, but it helps from an audit standpoint, right? And compliance standpoint. And so I don't know, not trying to confuse the situation, but I mean, I wonder if there could be a little people process and technology, you know, box that would guide it from a cybersecurity standpoint. Does
I
that make sense?
Yeah, let me see. So Eduardo's people are typing in chat. Makes sense to me, Kate. I've always used kind of I had a different phrase for it that I used to call the DevOps Trinity in the workshops that I would do. Um, I actually think what you triggered for me is we're trying to think about ways both visually but also in the taxonomy we establish to make this document more digestible because it's wieldy and it will be even more so once we start adding things. I love people processes tools as a way to do a top level subdivision. Uh, and then that at least mirrors what Ann and Ed are saying. It's hard to map tools into this, and not everything maps into tools. So let's pull tools out into their own category under people process tools taxonomy. So that's a long way of me voting yes for that.
So something else to consider. Would it be worth contacting the authors of the SSDF and seeing, do they have opinions here on how their content could be consumed by a working group like ourselves?
I actually think that's a good idea. Anybody else?
I pasted in the chat an example of this open source this other foundation. I think it's Open Source Security Foundation. They have this. They just released the first version of this open source project security baseline, and they do the mapping also with SSDF and European Cyber Resilience Act and some other frameworks. And they do it the other way around. I think it's first they describe their own controls and levels of controls, and then for each control they map to the parts of those specific frameworks.
And I think
So
that
this
we
is
were also, yeah,
the page is quite long, but that's how they map it. In the beginning, they divide by levels. They have this table of content. They divide by levels, and then they do the mapping on each access control, on each whatever control. And they launched this quite recently. I don't know how it overlaps with what we are doing.
mm,
Yeah, if you search for baseline.openssf.org, yeah, that one. If you start scrolling, you can see they have all these controls, levels for controls, and then they have more specifically what each control is about. Yeah, if you keep scrolling.
sorry, I know that can be visually difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everyone close their eyes.
Yeah, but then there you see every control has this little section, external framework mappings, and there they map to the Cyber Resilience Act, SSDF, and those other frameworks.
So they must have had problems with tables too.
Say again?
Seeing how it's sort of bullet pointed out. I
Yeah.
said they must have had issues with tables as well.
This
Yeah,
would
probably.
this would be more consumable if they just had the table of contents sticky on the left, you know.
Right? I mean, that's what, right, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different maturity levels is interesting.
Yeah, Kate, I think we can acknowledge that, like you said, people, process, and technology is a thing. Like we can't solve everything in SSDF with CI/CD pipelines, but we're going to focus on what the CI/CD pipelines can do for you, right?
Right. Right. Good point.
I don't think we want to get into documenting all the process things that get wrapped around this. It's too much.
Yeah, or
It will be.
we can do the similar approach. So we've divided, for example, our security guide is already divided in some way. If we focus on the tools, like Ken was saying, then we can do this mapping in the other way around. We say that this tool, for example, complies with this aspects of this frameworks, like those people were doing. Yeah, because it seems that they've also invented this this entire thing themselves, and then they did the mapping.
It looks good though. So it looks good to me. Like a lot of thought has been put into it. I don't know. Are the goals of this and this work of what we're looking at on screen and this working group a bit different? My understanding of the goals of this working group is that it enables developers and DevOps engineers to choose tools to meet certain requirements.
Yeah. It seems that this other one is more focused on set of security controls and criterias instead of tools. Yeah.
So I suppose then
I
it goes
think
back to the why, like, or what's the
goes
goal
back
of the
to-
group here? Is it to map to SSDF? Or why that, as opposed to, you know, other things such as the security baseline?
Well, I believe that the whole idea was, what frameworks were we gonna, are most commonly used, right? So the S2DF and NIST were the most common.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what, and then to me, the other important point was, for a while it has been shift left, everything being on the developer, but how do we stop that and bring it throughout the pipeline, right? Tying it with the Linux Foundation, the whole, CD Foundation is also an important part of this. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with, looking at I mean, so we have down here for more information about, the security frameworks and things like that, even talking about OpenSSF. I think one of the things that I know that personally I'm really concerned about is that making things consumable, making things so that it's not overwhelming, making it so that it is easier to make, to, safe codely, to codely safe, and provide guidelines that just are not, overwhelming, marry, DevSecOps, right? We're marrying dev and ops together, and trying to make it secure. So, and I personally have found that sometimes we can provide too much information and it becomes another, another vulnerability that we're introducing into an environment. So, but do I think that we can, look at this and say, can we make this into something that, fits well into the CD Foundation. And look at some of the tools that they have. I totally think so. So we're coming up. We got about less than 10 minutes. I think for next week, Brian, getting the, this whole, the whole why, really written, almost like this mission statement type of idea is important. And then we've talked about looking at tables and, how do we address that? Anything else? I don't want to ignore, Ed, what you're saying, like the whole point of why. So I want to make sure that we clarify why we're doing this. I know Brian and Jude wasn't able to join today, but I also know that we want to get out there and start to talk about the framework on why we're doing this. And the second point, I can't stress enough that, making it easy, and maybe it is with a table at the bottom of the of the page. It says, look, you do this and these are the checkpoints. These are some of the tools that we've heard out there that really, I think, more the tool that can do more, that can check off more of the security boxes is more important than one-offs. I mean, that's how we got to, going into an organization and finding, 120 tools and 80 different vendors and everything else. And so how do we collapse that so it's not so complicated? But is there anything else as we wrap up?
Yeah, I will try to add a search bar and search feature to the site like this 2 weeks before we meet again. So I submitted PR soon for that. Is it okay?
Say one more time about the search feature.
Search bar. So I'm going to add a search bar with indexing of the pages we have currently just to try it out as a proof of concept. But also having it in the preview so we can check it out on GitHub.
Okay.
So I think that might help a little bit because we discussed the issue a little bit before today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Ed, what about you? You look like you're about to say something.
No, just excited by the potential here. We could the potential here to make a bit of an impact on the broader industry and help a few developers along the way too. So I'm excited by that. So line up the action items. I'll do my best to contribute.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else before we end the call?
Yeah, one other idea potentially for us to help us figure out more of the why is to maybe even think of conducting some survey with some developers and people to see what they are really lacking from their own words, with such missing such pages or something, or what they would like to see there. I don't know if you did already something like that, but that could be also a potential initiative that we could try to work on to spread the word for a survey to get more insights.
It's definitely interesting, and I'm wondering if personally going out to some of these, like the yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk
Mhm.
about that, Eduardo, for the next call.
Yeah.
And some ideas around that. All right. Cool. Okay, everybody. Hey, see you in a couple weeks. And thank
Thanks,
you
William.
for your.
Thank
See you.
Okay, take care.